Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great, as I always say. And in this video, I have all kinds of pretty crazy encounters. I got one from Sri Lanka, one from Quebec, Mexico, East Texas, and all over the place. So if this piques your interest, then definitely pull up a stump with me, and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. This happened to me back when I was 14. I was at my grandpa's farm, and I decided to go out in the middle of the night to hunt monsters, which was pretty dumb in retrospect. So I sneak outside and I begin walking towards the barn. And then I start hearing a strange noise coming from the barn. I hear a cow begin to moo, and then it's cut off by some kind of growl. I decide to investigate. I walk into another part of the barn and look into the cow area. I see this giant black humanoid sitting there. It's not a wolf or a bear. It has arms and walks on two legs. It looks right up at me. Its eyes glint with red. I run out of the barn and back into the house. When the morning comes, my grandfather freaks out because two of his cows have been killed and were mutilated. I never told anyone what I saw that night. So this happened when I was babysitting. It was just two regular kids. The kids are very well behaved, but I feel sorry for them because their parents are really crap, but the pay is good. The house is pretty big and it's out in the middle of nowhere. It was about 1 a.m. when this happened. The parents weren't back yet. They were probably out getting drunk. So I put the kids to bed around 9 p.m. and I'm just playing on my laptop. As I'm doing this, I hear rapping at the door to the back. It's a double glass door to the garden. There's nothing there at first. I go check outside but see nothing, and I figure it must be just the wind or something. A few minutes later, there's another rapping. I turn to see their daughter pressed up against the glass, smiling at me, before backing up and disappearing into the darkness. I run to the door to get her, but I feel chills run down my back just as I reach for the handle. I decide instead to run upstairs to their bedroom. I open the door to find them both sound asleep in their beds. All the doors and windows are locked in the house, except the back doors that I saw her pressed up against. I kept hearing bangs all throughout the night from outside after locking the back doors, from every single downstairs window in the house. I don't know if it was the two playing a prank, but I don't know how they could because they were super young and they were both fast asleep. And I thought all this backwoods creepy stuff only happened in America. I'm British, by the way. I have this one that my grandma shared with me a while back. So she grew up in pretty rural Mexico. She lived across the street from this beautiful park that happened to have a public swimming pool in the center. She would spend all day in the water. She loved to swim. One night, she woke up with this undying urge to go for a swim. She thought about it for a second or two, and then decided that going for a quick swim would maybe help her go to sleep. So she put on her swimsuit, grabbed a towel, and stepped outside. It was a very dark, quiet night that night. She crossed the street and slowly made her way into the park. With every step she took, the lampposts spread around the park slowly started getting dimmer and dimmer. She felt as if 1,000 eyes were watching her. She shook all this off as just her being nervous about how dark it was. And as she got to the pool, the only thing that was illuminating the light around her was the blue light from the pool. She set down her towel next to the water and dove on in. She swam peacefully for a few minutes when out of nowhere, this massive dog appeared from the shadows. She said the air filled with the scent of sulfur, like the dog had came from a volcano. It had bright red eyes, and it was darker than the shadows that surrounded it. The dog jumped into the pool and swam at full speed toward her. She lifted herself out of the water as quickly as possible and made a full-on sprint toward the house across the street. As she ran, she could hear the pounding of this hellhound's paws behind her, getting closer and closer. She was getting more and more fatigued and was about to collapse because of the sprinting. With whatever strength she had left, she turned around and screamed at the dog, "What do you want from me?" The dog stopped and then stood up on two legs and whispered, "Nothing." My grandma stood there in total shock as the dog vanished into the shadows from where it first appeared. So I was camping in the Rockies in mid-October a few years back, and this is the first time that I was actually scared out of my mind. I decided to go camp overnight, and I drive up the mountain, and I chill for a while, and then I set up camp. And not too much happens during this time, but it's close to dusk, and I'm still out. So I don't have my flashlight, because it was a clear night with a really bright moon. After a while, I stop where I am, and I start to head back to camp, because it's getting hard to see in the thick trees. Suddenly, it feels like a vacuum came over the whole area. That silence that feels like the air is solid. No insects, outdoor sounds, or leaves, or anything. Every hair in my body is beginning to stand up. I feel staticky. I stop in my tracks. Absolute quiet. It's that stuffy, suffocating silence. I see the leaves rustle on the ground, but I can't hear it. I can see the trees moving in the wind, but there's no noise. Then I smell it. Gallons of blood mixed with coins. You know what this might be. My goosebumps have goosebumps. I'm as tense as I've ever been. It's that deep, instinctual fear, like nothing I've ever felt, goes up and down my spine. I know something is watching me. Something old, big, and powerful. I stay still for what seems like hours, all the while knowing that I'm being sized up. It knows that I'm there. I take my rifle off my back. I always have a gun with me when I'm outdoors. I have it low and ready. Suddenly, there's a big snap behind me to the left. I fire twice at the spot where I heard it. I hear an angry, prowling growl. In the trees about 35 yards from me, I can tell whatever it is big. I know what bears and cougars sound like and feel like when they're hunting you. This is different. I book it back to my camp where my truck is. I hear it following me. I run. It runs. I'm almost dying trying to keep my breath steady and trying not to crash into anything in the dark. Luckily, the moon's out. After running and stumbling forever, I'm back at my truck. I leave my tent and supplies. I drive off the mountain that night. I decide to go back the next afternoon. My tent has been shredded. It's in rags. My food and supplies have been ransacked. But the latches are open on the containers. And there's handprints everywhere. It wasn't an animal that did this. It had hands. So this was quite a while ago now, the early 2000s. I was visiting my family in Sri Lanka. We're driving to Colombo in the dead of the night, and we have to travel through a forest to get there. Suddenly, my uncle stops the car and turns off the lights. My dad asks him what's up, and he whispers something back in Tamil. My dad's face freezes. I vividly remember his eyes widen in terror. I ask what's up. I'm told that there's a bull elephant in must, and that driving past it may drive it to attack. I could tell this was a lie. My dad was a dreadful liar. That, and it was pitch black out. How could they tell that it was an elephant in must? The two men debate on what to do for a few minutes. I was born in the West, so I don't speak Tamil. I could only tell that both my father and my uncle were getting increasingly frantic. My uncle finally panics and slams the pedal. We set off at breakneck speed. My dad tries to pull me away from the windows, but I was too keen on seeing the elephant. I look to the rear, and I see something humanoid that is chasing behind the car. It's nowhere near the size of an elephant. It looked like and ran like a person, sort of. I couldn't see it clearly. It was only in the taillights. But if I didn't know any better, I'd have to say that it was giant and had what looked like a beard almost. I tell my dad that there was a man there and that maybe he was running away from the elephant. My dad just says no and doesn't answer further. He hurriedly says something to my uncle, and he responds with the Tamil equivalent of, "Oh my God." I spend the next few days at the temple. My uncle makes sure that various pujas are performed for my safety and my prosperity. My dad won't talk about it whenever I bring it up, but I know what I saw that night, and it's haunted me ever since. Back when I was 21, I'm in my 30s now. Every June, I used to buy fireworks up in Paja, Nevada, and I would drive home to California to sell them for profit. This happened around 1 a.m. on the 127 to Baker. There's no other cars on the road. It's almost a full moon. I'm listening to some kind of music, and the dash and stereo lights are low. It's really vibey, if you get what I mean. Then, I spot a pair of eyes about 1/8 of a mile in front of me, 30 feet off to the right side of the road, and I think it must be some animal or whatever. So I slow down to about 25 miles per hour in case it runs out in front of my car. As I get closer, I can see that it's some kind of quadruped, but I can't really make out a lot of details as to what kind of animal. Suddenly, it starts sprinting toward the car. I drop gear and I accelerate because I don't want this dumb animal to dent my car. The animal starts chasing. Mid-sprint, it stands up on its hind legs and starts running almost like a person. And I say, "Oh, hell no." It gains speed and crosses the road right in front of my car, and then turns and looks at me. It had a humanoid-type body, covered in hair. The face looked emaciated, like it was missing part of its cheek, but I could see its teeth, and its eyes were terrible. Through the hair I could see several scars on its body. I'm accelerating almost to 80 miles per hour, and it's still following me a little ways back. I can hear it doing some kind of growl or yell, but I don't know. This goes on for about 2 minutes. I track it in my rearview mirror as it crosses the road a couple of times and tries to swipe and grab at the car. It makes a series of jumps on all fours before standing on its hind legs to run again. Suddenly, it makes a hard right and disappears. As I'm continuing to drive, I'm scanning my surroundings to try and see if it's still following me or where the hell it went. I finally get to Baker. I stop to get a burger and a beer to calm my nerves. I tell the waitress what happened. She says, "Oh yeah, once in a while we get people saying they were chased by coyotes on the 127. I say, "I don't think it was a coyote. It had the face of a man and ran like a man." She said, "Oh yeah, sometimes people see crazy things." I don't think she believed me, but I know what I saw. To this day, I don't really know what I experienced, but it still strikes me as unusual when I think back on it. The thing is, since then, I've gone camping and I never had any troubles outside of this one. So it was the summer of 2013. I was 24 years old. My friend invites me and a mutual friend and a bunch of other people that I didn't know for a campfire and just chilling. The location that we went to was some kind of old abandoned open sky mine that turned into a lake after dozens of years in the heart of Quebec. The water was this azure green because of the minerals in the mine. It was beautiful, to be honest. So after chilling for a bit, we set up camp. There's myself, our mutual friend who's one of my best friends. There's the guy who invited us, two guys that I don't know, and my best buddy. We introduce ourselves all to each other. We have a bit of a conversation, and we start helping on cutting wood. One of the guys that we don't know comes there pretty often. He has his own encampment location and stuff. He shows us around, and he proposes that we jump in the lake from one of the cliffs. Me and the guy who invited all of us take the dare. We go, and we almost chicken out a couple of times, but then jump. It's a 30-foot dive. It was really cool. I swim back to the campfire. I don't have my glasses since I left everything up on the cliff before jumping. I tell everyone that I'm going to climb the hill to get my stuff back from up top. I venture alone, and as I'm climbing up, I see the silhouette of something clearly watching me. There's another guy from our camp waiting up there. He darts off my vision. I get up the cliff, get my stuff back, and I put my glasses on, and I don't see a sign of anybody. So I go back down, and I chill at the fire for a while. It gets dark. One of our friends proposes that we go exploring the woods. It's a really cool area, so I'm definitely into it, and I start exploring the place. We find crumbled shafts all over the place, old ruins and everything else. Suddenly, a security truck's spotlights appear at the horizon at the bottom of the hill, and we think, oh crap, it's the popo. We all scatter and hide in the woods. I feel like Solid Snake crouching in the grass as flat as possible, not to be seen. The truck passes by, and we quickly change location. And I think I am having a blast at this. This is so much fun. We all reunite at the fire, but one guy's missing. We start to worry, calling out his name. Finally, we decide to go up the hill again and find him. As we look for him amongst the ruins, he suddenly appears out of nowhere, telling us he went to do some exploring on his own. He tells us to forget about it, and that he's fine. So, we all go back to the fire. We spend a couple of hours there together, drinking beer and smoking cigarettes. He was usually pretty talkative, but since he's been back, he's been just standing in the same spot, not saying anything to anybody, just staring at the fire. It's now past 1 a.m. Me and my best buddy decide to head home. I'm the one driving. I start heading down the dirt path back to our car. It's about a 15-minute walk. He decides to go back home too. I try to walk with him and my buddy so that we can have a conversation together. No matter how fast I try to keep my pace, I can't keep up with him. He walks calmly, but it's like at the speed that seems totally impossible for someone who's just walking. I have to jog to keep up with him. Eventually, he just disappears into the darkness, and I eventually found the way back to the car. For the rest of that night, nobody heard of the guy or even knew where he went off to. But what the weird thing is that I hear later on that he was super pissed that we all left him in the woods. He said that he was out there alone, trying to find something cool to bring back, and something pushed him. And then he woke up, hours later. Weirdest of all, most of his clothes were missing. He was also very adamant about having not came back to the fire with us because he was lost in the woods. So just what happened out there? Who do we walk back with? The other weird thing that I don't know if is related or not, but a day later my arm started paining really bad. I had a bite on my arm that got infected afterwards and even left a scar. I had an experience back in 2012. I was living in eastern Texas, and a lot of this weird stuff started happening in my apartment complex. And this is definitely not just some ghost story. Being an urban-esque area, I decided not to investigate too much, and I figured that cryptids would generally avoid the general populous areas. So, we fast forward to a few weeks after the initial experience. This guy named Fernando gets hired at my work. I smoke with him a few times. He's super chill. Then I find out that despite having the name Fernando, he's not actually Mexican. He's pure Navajo and just moved here a few weeks ago, straight off of a reserve in Arizona. At the time, I thought nothing of it. I had just made a new friend. But weird stuff kept happening and escalating a little bit. It turns out that he lives in the same apartment complex as me. Now I start to see the dots here. I'm getting really interested in the skinwalker phenomenon. Having access to a Navajo, I want to ask him about them. He tells me a whole bunch of stuff about them, all of their myths and legends and stories and everything, through various native cultures. He mentions something that sticks with me. He said they say that when a native leaves his home, a skinwalker follows them. And I think, oh crap. I begin to investigate all these weird goings-on immediately. My girlfriend begins noticing weird stuff too. We hear children's laughter at random times. We hear something stomping on the stairs outside. I at first think it's the neighbors, but when I go out, there's nobody there, and I find no evidence of any person out there. The ruckus begins immediately as I walk back inside. I touch the door handle to leave again. The noise stops. My girlfriend eventually confesses to me that she hears voices on her in the house. It happens at an increasing frequency. It starts happening to me. We start smelling weird things on the way inside to the house one day. It begins happening more often, with more increasing intensity each day. I decide to ask Fernando for advice. He tells me that tobacco is considered a holy plant and works as a repellent, as if I needed more excuses to smoke at this point, right? I start a habit of smoking a cigarette on my way inside. The weird stuff stops, and I think, well, what do you know? I forget to light up one time before coming home. My girlfriend's at work and will be home soon. I hop in the shower. I hear my front door open. I'm a weirdo who sits in the shower when I'm cleaning. I begin to brush my teeth in the shower. I'm a stickler for efficiency. I get all the toothpaste and lather my grill and spit. Then I hear the same sound, like somebody had just replayed me spitting toothpaste. This smell starts creeping into the shower. I shower very hot showers, so the steam must have slowed it down. I'm not a scientist, I don't know why, but I start panicking. Maybe I'm just hearing things. I heard the door open a second time. My girlfriend tells me she's home. I initiate man mode for the safety of my hard-earned apartment and my girlfriend. I throw back the shower curtain and a display of testosterone-fueled courage. The bathroom's empty, but I still smell that copper and shit smell. It's coming from the air vent, and I thought these things were supposed to be giant. But I guess if it's a supernatural being, then spaces don't really matter. I power walk naked into the living room. I throw my girlfriend into the bedroom and I explain what's been going on and close the door behind us. Not even 5 seconds later, something barrels through the hallway and knocks a whole bunch of stuff over. I'm pretty sure that my cat got spooked or kicked too because it screamed. I hear the door open and what sounds like something running on pavement. I run out the door, still naked, and I see something huge and hairy as it drops behind a fence that it just jumped over like nothing. I considered following it, but I came to my senses and just kinda noped back inside. I walked inside and locked the door. I basically smoked an entire pack of cigarettes in record time. Sometimes, when I forget to light up, we hear voices outside of our window at night. It likes to sound like a little girl. Normally, it'll just say, "Hi," and then giggle, followed by scurrying feet, and sometimes I see the top of its hairy head. So, what'd you think of those encounters? Let me know which one was your favorite one down in the comments. Do you have one of your own? I'm just going to leave the email that I used to use in the description until I decide what I want the new one to be named, so you can send it to that one. And if you're interested in something else, I have a PayPal and a Patreon if you would like to donate to the channel. And to end the video off, I thought it would be interesting to tell a story that was told to me in person. And this would take place in the deep woods, obviously. They were fishing, the two people involved. That day they were fishing. They had taken an old logging road and then had gone on foot a few kilometers into the woods. So the fishing was fine and the day went by fine, as every other fishing trip they've ever done before and after this. So how they did it was one of them was a little closer to the water, or in the water I think, and the other one was about, I'm going to say 100, 200 feet downstream, just so they don't fish too close together. And again, they had fished in this spot for years, before and after this. So what happened was your typical situation where the sound disappears like the vacuum thing, and this is where the two stories kind of split off into their own. So the guy who was in the river, he said that the same thing had happened to him, but he just stood there thinking, oh, that's weird, but he just kept fishing, and it came back after a few minutes. But the other guy talked about being almost spaced out, like he got really fatigued and disoriented. So he thought that maybe he should go up over the side hill and get his water, and maybe he needs to sit down or something. So he gets up and goes over the bank, and he can't find his water. So he keeps walking, trying to find his water, and you can probably guess where this is going, that he gets lost. And not only did he get lost, he said he saw in the dark woods a set of eyes that seemed to be following him or beckoning him. He walked toward it to see if it was like somebody that needed help, or maybe if it was an animal or whatever, and that would run off if it knew that humans were nearby. But that didn't happen. Instead, what happened was that the eyes seemed to go back into the woods the farther that he walked into the woods. So it's almost like they played this game of chicken. He would walk a few steps into the woods and the eyes or figure would back up. Then he would walk back toward the trail and they would follow him back toward the trail. Now at this point, the other fisherman had realized that his friend was gone, so he went and tried to find him. And the weird part is that according to him, the water and tackle box and all that stuff was right where it should have been. So he starts calling his friend's name, and this seems to snap his friend out of wherever he is. And he said when he heard his name first, it was very faint, like it was being carried on the wind kind of thing. It seemed to be around this time that he started walking back toward the trail, and the eyes were still following him. And I think that he said he walked, without even knowing, he walked like 500 feet into deep woods that he wasn't familiar with. So his friend's walking down the trail that they had followed, calling his friend's name. Eventually, the other guy, who was seeing the eyes, replies, but he doesn't take his eyes off of whatever's looking at him, and for some reason he's still having a hard time seeing what it is. But they eventually meet up together, and the other guy sees whatever this is and is like, what in the F is that? This would be when the thing reveals itself, just like in a horror movie. It's basically, how it was described is similar to a bear in like kind of build, but also kind of humanoid, and it walked on two legs. And that's pretty much what they saw of it, because it snarled at them in this weird, throaty kind of growl, and then, without breaking eye contact, retreated back into the brush and just disappeared. So now the part that I can't explain about that is the whole thing where they both had the vacuum thing, even though they were a couple 100 feet apart, which is weird to me. That, and plus the thing in general they saw, because I've been in this area and I've never had anything out of the ordinary happen. But then again, neither have they after this. So, who knows what it was. But yeah, I probably got some details wrong or missed some details, but that's the general gist. They went fishing, they were pretty far apart. One guy seems to be under a spell or something, while the other guy seems to be like under a weaker version of it, I don't know. But they both come out okay, so I guess no harm there, but still weird what they saw and what they experienced in it. Anyways, if you liked the video, then consider liking and subscribing. And thank you for pulling up a stump, and thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.